Thank you for coming to my talk, Writing Successful Personal Statements for Master Applications. I would like to clarify the word successful because right now you're applying for the program. So perhaps what you have in mind is whether I can get into a master program. If I can get into a program, then the personal statement would be considered successful. But I think the more important thing in the whole process is eventually you want to get a job, right? You want to launch your career. So here, what I have in mind is whether or not you will be able to succeed professionally in the long term, and to what extent the master's degree program can actually help you. I hope you can keep this in mind when you prepare for this personal statement. Again, I'd like to share with you my personal stories. I did my undergraduate degree in the States, Washington University in St. Louis, and then I taught English at Hillsong University of Science and Technology for 2 years. After these 2 years of teaching, I actually applied for a couple of different master programs, and including I got offered to study at Oxford, Cambridge, Columbia, and Warwick. Eventually, I decided to study at Oxford. But as you can see, the program is comparative and international education, which is not about language teaching. So in retrospect, I feel that it was not the best decision that I made because, as I said, this is about comparative and international education. If I eventually work in the government or doing things related to education policies, then it's probably going to be a good program. But since later I continued to teach English, and eventually I did my PhD in English Studies at CTU. So I think the program that I got, the degree I got from Oxford, the kind of training I got, it's really not that useful or helpful for my career development. So I think this is a story that we can all learn lessons from. Basically, you have to be very, very careful when you choose your master programs, because it's very likely that you will get admitted to some programs, not all the programs. And we have to make this distinction between the master program students, because basically you're going to pay the tuition. So that makes you as a customer, as a consumer, which is going to be very different from the PhD students, because PhD students, they get stipends, they don't have to pay tuitions. So they are basically employees. They are like a junior research assistant working in the lab. All right, so there's a huge difference between these two categories, and we have to keep that in mind. And not just choose a school because it's famous, because a famous university also wants your money. It's unfortunate these days that a lot of universities, they think of master program is just a way to make money. Maybe that statement is a bit extreme, but maybe we can put it in this way. Master program or master education usually is not top priority for the universities. It's also not a top priority for the faculty members. They probably want to do well in the undergraduate teaching. They also want to train the PhD students well. But for master program, they don't necessarily put a lot of resources into it. Well, I'm not trying to say it's not worthwhile, but I just want to remind you that it's very important to be more choosy and to be more careful when you choose the program, so that you really get your money's worth. So again, choose the programs based on your needs and your future career plan. And I do want to emphasize the importance to have a career plan when you choose the master program, because if you do not have a very clear career plan at the moment, you want to wait until after you finish your master program, then you can figure out what you want to do with your life or with your career. I think that might be true, because that's exactly what I did when I decided to go to Oxford to do that comparative international education. I have no idea what that program would enable me to do. But then the only thing I have in mind is maybe I can try something different. Maybe I don't necessarily want to continue teaching English. But I think it would be much better if we can have a more sort of better plan for our career before we commit ourselves to this master program, because it's quite expensive actually. It's expensive in terms of tuition, and also expensive in terms of the time that you will spend on the program. Okay, so the next question that I do hope you can think about would be, what can you do if you do not pursue this master program? So we're looking at the other opportunities, the other options. This is the classic concept of opportunity cost, right? You all know that. So let's brainstorm a little bit and suggest a few other options. Maybe after today's workshop you change your mind. You never know. Another option would be, instead of doing a master program, you can try to apply and do a PhD. Okay, and for tomorrow we will have a workshop on PhD. If you haven't signed up, maybe you can come tomorrow night and we can talk about how to write a personal statement for PhD program. And sometimes people do not feel confident to do a PhD yet, so they want to do a master first. But I think for the US, if you only go to the US for the PhD, usually the school will give you some time to take more courses and to just explore your interest before you commit yourself to do your research. And sometimes they even give you an option to walk away from the PhD program with a master degree. So just make sure that if you don't want to do PhD, you can leave. So I think if you think PhD is a possibility, you should always try a PhD program in the US. Option which maybe you didn't consider this is actually to get a job in a famous company, in a good international company, because most of the good companies like HSBC or the Big Four auditing firms, they actually have pretty good in-house training program for their new colleagues, like management trainee program. And I think to spend 1 or 2 years in these kind of companies would probably help you to become a much better trained professional than to do a master degree. So including, actually, you can try to look into some universities like University in Hong Kong that hired full-time research assistants for 1 or 2 years. And if you do an RA position, you will have the opportunity to do research, you get paid, and you work with the professors who get funding to hire you. So I think this is another option you want to keep it up. And also, perhaps if you want to stay in Hong Kong, you could also look into some part-time programs. This way you can study, and at the same time you can get some work experience. I don't know whether you're interested in pursuing a career in accounting or auditing. If you are not an accounting major, I think you should still look into this possibility, especially if you've come from a quantitative or statistical background, because a lot of people actually spend a few years in the auditing firms, like before they move on to pursue a career in iBank, like investment bank or other financial companies. But even if you do not have an accounting degree, you can always just spend like half a year full-time or 1 year part-time to get a conversion program, and then you'll be qualified to pursue the CPA, to become a CPA in Hong Kong, and then you will be able to work in a Big Four, or to using the accounting career as a stepping stone towards investment bank. I think a lot of people are not aware of the fact that actually the auditing firms, especially the Big Four auditing firms, they do not expect people to have an accounting degree. So long as you have a good degree and you have good communication skills, they're interested. Especially if you come from like quantitative background or engineering background, they may be even more interested in you. So always look into that option as well. Start up, there's always a possibility. Take a gap year and do something you find really interesting and useful. So basically the bottom line here, the key message here is that it's very important to explore alternative paths in order to minimize the opportunity cost, right? So you want to make sure that you choose the best, highest valued options, so that whatever you give up is the second best value, which is also the lowest for opportunity cost. Then maybe we can also try to answer this question more positively. Why pursuing a master degree? Maybe we can think of in this way. We have you right now, and you have your strengths, you have your weaknesses, and you also presumably have a dream job, okay, a job that you want to get, but you're not ready yet, okay, just like Hao just said, okay, not ready for your dream job. But the trouble is sometimes you don't know what is your dream job yet, okay, that could be a problem. But as I I'm trying to argue is that if you don't have a very clear idea what you want to do with your professional career, or what you want to pursue in your career, you probably want to spend a bit more time trying to figure that out before you make your decision about your master degree. Maybe you want to spend more time talking with people that you trust and try to have a better idea about your career. I have to say this is actually very difficult. Okay, when I was your age, I have no idea. Okay, so you don't have to feel too bad if you have no idea at the moment. But presumably 3 years later, hopefully you will be ready for your dream job. So you have the you right now, and then the you 3 years later. There's a gap, and there's a gap there. So hopefully the master program that you will apply and eventually get into, you pursue that program can bring. So the program will actually provide you the kind of training and skills that you need to get your dream job, to launch your career, and to become successful professionally. Hopefully, this is the story. Okay, this is the story you have in mind. And this is also the story that you want to tell a personal statement. You want to tell your readers that the reason why you want to pursue this master degree is because you have a pretty clear idea what you want to do after the master degree. And this particular degree program can help you to be ready for the kind of challenges that you have to face when you graduate from the degree program and to get a job that you want. So in terms of the importance of personal statements, in fact, if you look at all the literature, you look at what people have to say about the personal statement, we don't really have a very clear idea how important is a good personal statement, because when we look at the application outcome, it is affected by many different factors. Probably your GPA is the most important factor, but also in terms of your other experiences, and sometimes even your nationality could be a factor, because a lot of admission programs, they try to balance the intake from different geographical origins. So anyway, we don't know how important is a good personal statement, but one thing we do know is that if you write a bad personal statement, that's going to hurt you. So you want to make sure that you don't write a bad or poorly written personal statement. So hopefully through today's workshop, at least you can avoid that. But more importantly, I want to point out that actually writing a personal statement should be a very useful and valuable experience in its own right. Okay, not necessarily for meeting the requirement for the application. It's actually a very good opportunity for you to reflect on your education that you have received at undergraduate level, and also in terms of how you want to plan your career. This is going to be an opportunity, because when you write something down, you have to think through it very clearly in order to write it out. Okay, so I do hope that this piece of document, in the process of writing this personal statement, you will have to do some soul searching, to think about what you want to become in the next 3 to 5 years. And also, hopefully you can keep this document, revisit it, read it again a year later, 2 years later, and hopefully you can track your progress and remind yourself what is your goal and what is your plan. So there's this thing called this quote, begin with the end in mind. So I think this is very useful advice. It's actually from a very famous book. It's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have you heard of that book? One of the habits for highly effective people is to begin with the end in mind. Okay, I think this quote, this advice is very relevant here, because when you apply for the master program, you want to think about what are you going to do, or what will happen when you graduate from the master program. And when you walk into the interview room, it's the selection panel. How are you going to talk about yourself, and to what extent you are well prepared and well trained for the job that you want to apply. A more specific advice I want to give you when you apply for the master program is you want to do your homework and research the program. So it will probably take quite a bit of time, which is why I think you probably want to limit the number of programs that you want to apply. I know a lot of people, Chinese students, they tend to apply like 15 to 20 programs. I think that number is a bit too big. Okay, so I think maybe within 10 would be more reasonable. Instead of applying too many programs, you want to just look into the program more deeply and look through the official websites and also try to get more information from different sources. And specifically, these are some of the items you want to. The first one is obviously the writing instructions for the personal statement. Sometimes they call it a statement of purposes. Because personal statement as a genre is quite more or less is the same. The readers would have pretty similar expectations. So the writing instructions from different master programs are also not that different. But I think it's still very important to read the writing instructions from different programs very carefully and then write the personal statement based on that writing instructions. So you don't want to just write one piece of personal statement and submit to different programs. Okay? So you have to read it very carefully. And also for the follow-up tutorial, give me your outline for feedback, or later on give me the full text draft for feedback. You should also send me the writing instruction. Okay, I will look at that and then read your outline of full text essay. And increasingly, I think a lot of programs nowadays, they would also list the intended learning outcomes. Sometimes it's not necessarily a very sort of concrete words or concrete things, but I think you should still look into this intended learning outcomes and see whether or not these outcomes would match your needs, match your career plan. And maybe you want to refer to these outcomes in your personal statement as well. Student profiles is also quite important. Again, you can go to the websites and sometimes they will give this kind of information. I think you should be more cautious if you find that actually 40% or 50% of the student body is from China. That might be a concern because when you go to the States or any other English-speaking universities, you don't want to spend most of the time like doing projects with Mandarin-speaking friends, right? So of course there's some other information, so you want to see whether you would fit in with that student profiles. Size of enrollments is also something relevant, along with admission rate. So actually, if you look at these two pieces of information, you can somehow figure out the no-show rate. So you can see that actually even the top universities for the master program, they don't always, they give out all the offers, but not everyone will show up. So that would be some information for you to take into account as well. And then core and elective courses, okay, obviously that's important because you have to look at the courses that you have to take, and you need to think about whether you have the background to do these courses, and also whether or not the courses provided by the training by the master program actually can develop the skills that you need to develop. I think research backgrounds of the faculty members is also something you want to think about. Master program is not a research degree in the sense that when you do a research degree like an MPhil or PhD, you have to somehow do some kind of original research. But still, I think a lot of master programs still expect the students to do a master dissertation, which means you still have to do some kind of research project. The only difference is that probably it's going to be less demanding in terms of you don't have to be original. Okay, but you still have to apply the theory, you still have to collect the data and to do the analysis. Okay, so maybe you want to look into the faculty members and see if there's anyone who is doing something that you're interested in. So that would be something to consider as well. Again, thesis or project requirements. Some master programs require you to write a thesis and others may not. Okay, so depending on your needs and your expectations, you can make a choice. Internship opportunities is also very important. If the master program specifically state that they offer or arrange some kind of internship for their students, then you should probably consider that's a plus, because that will be very good for your further career development. Job placement of graduates, you don't necessarily always get the detailed information on this item, but maybe you want to do a little bit more research and try to get a bit more information, because that would somehow help you to predict how likely you will get a job, get a placement after you. And finally, if you go to the United States, in the US they have something called OPT, which is optional practical training. And I think most students can either get a 12 months or 18 months of OPT. I don't have the most updated information, so maybe you want to look it up. But then there's something called STEM extension. So if your program is related to science, technology, engineering, or math, or I don't know, medicine or math, anyway, then you will have more months for OPT. So if you do your research on the master program, maybe you want to look into whether it's eligible for the STEM. That's again a very good thing, because then you will have more opportunity to work in the US and get more work, right? So again, the key message here is that you want to do your homework and you want to collect as much information about the programs that you apply. Okay, and then that will inform you to make the right decisions, and also this will prepare you to write your personal statements. So the guiding questions when you research the program include what can I learn academically, and also what other non-academic learning opportunities can I get. So these are the two key questions, and also you might want to think about whether you have the background, you have the skills to you're ready to benefit, fully benefit from the master program, or will I do well in the master program. And in terms of the sources of information, the official website is obviously the most important source. And then you might also try to email the program secretary and director if you have any specific question. You want to network with the current students and alumni, and sometimes maybe you want to talk to the employers who probably know more about these different programs, because they will have to recruit graduates. And I would also strongly encourage you to do campus visit. Actually, I think if you travel off season, non-peak season, the ticket is not that expensive. So even flying to the States, it's not as expensive as you imagine. So perhaps you want to just arrange some kind of campus visit. That would be very helpful, because considering the money you would put in to commit yourself to that master program, I think spend some time and money to do the campus visit would be quite worth the while. And also another possibility, you want to look into the conferences in the East Asia region and see whether or not some of the faculty members of the master program may show up in the conferences. If that's the case, you want to meet with them, you can go to that conference. Again, going to a conference is not that expensive, so I think it's an investment you want to consider. So this way you will get more information about the programs. And then I want to talk about how you want to frame your personal statements, how you want to organize your personal statement according to the writing instructions. I want to show you one writing instruction which is a little bit unconventional. It's a bit different from the kind of writing instruction that you usually would encounter. Maybe you can take a quick look at instruction. Actually, this instruction is from UCLA Financial Engineering Master in Finance program. And for UCLA, if you want to apply for this program, you have to write three essays, okay? And this is the first one, which is basically ask you to talk about a project that you worked on. And through the description of this project, you want to talk about your skills, problem-solving skills, analytical skills, and then talk about why this project was interesting to you. Okay, so hopefully they want to get a better idea of who you are, your identity, your interests through this project. Let me give you some hints or my suggestions on how you may want to write this essay. First of all, it's very important when you write any essay is to think about the framework. So that's something I'll talk about all the time. You need to have a good framework in order to write a good essay. And when you describe a project, I think this IMRD framework is very natural. It's very suitable. I'm not saying this is the only model, but this is the only framework, but it's quite suitable here. So basically, we can adopt the introduction IMRD model. So we start with an introduction, just like writing an academic paper. So in the introduction, you want to give out background information about the project, and maybe a little bit the purpose of the project, the goal of the project, and then explain why this project is important. You want to justify the efforts of doing this project. And then the method section, you want to tell the readers what tools and what theories you have applied, or whatever data you have collected, or what you have done for the method section. And then the result, what you have got, or if it's a practical project, what's the outcome. And then the discussion, you want to talk about your skills, you want to talk about the contribution, and to talk about how this project is related to your education and development. So I think this framework could be quite useful. And then, of course, according to the writing instruction, you will need to identify some specific skill and some concrete and quantitative supporting details. Okay, so the word quantitative here is very important because you want to give out some numbers to support whatever points that you are trying to make. And the third point here is not mentioned in the writing instruction, but this is assumed because you're writing an essay to apply for the program. So it's very important for you to relate whatever you're talking about here, especially the skills, to the program. Okay, so you only convince the readers that you have developed the skills that would enable you to do well in the program, but at the same time, the program would provide training for you to further develop the skills, and you will become more successful professionally. And then one question that you might have in mind is, what if I have more than one project I want to talk about? Because here the essay says one project, but what if you have 2 projects or 3 projects that are all interesting and valuable? My suggestion is that if you have space, you may want to relate some other project that you have done when you talk about this project, that the main project you want to focus on, because somehow you should be able to find some connections, right? So you can say, I get some inspiration from this project to do this, or there's some skills I developed in a different project that actually helped me. Okay, so this way you may be able to mention some other projects that you consider very important. Let's take a look at the second essay that UCLA asked the candidates to write. I think this essay question also somehow echo the point I made earlier, which is applying for a master program is all about career development. Okay, it's all about how the program can help you to do well in your professional career. So that is why this essay is about why do you find a career in quantitative finance appealing, and why do you think this is the right career path for you? So I think this essay question presumably, we should say, expect the candidates to have a pretty clear career path. Let's reinforce the point I made earlier, is that you don't want to apply for the master program and wait until you study get an opportunity to study in the program, to explore, to decide what you want to do with your career. You want to have a pretty clear idea what you want to do as soon as you can. Strike out this, because this is a brutally honest answer, and which is not very useful. So what you need to do is, again, you have to have a career path. So if you want to write this essay, probably the first thing you want to do is to map out your career path. Quantitative finance, that's just a big, okay, specifically what kind of career path you want to take. You have to describe it, right? Because when you describe a career path, you show your readers that you have pretty good idea what you want to do. I think most committee members, they want to take in students that have a pretty good career plan, right? As you can see in this essay question. So the reason why you choose this career path is because you have the talents and abilities to succeed in this career. And maybe here again, they didn't ask you to talk about the program, but you want to talk about the program because you're writing a statement for the program, right? So you want to talk about the training at the master level. The training that you can get from the program can actually, further enhance your skills, and then you will be able to meet the challenge, the requirements for the career path. So the keyword is the matching. And the second keyword would be interest. You think this career path is suitable, is the right career path for you because it's interesting. Okay, you find it interesting and rewarding. And here, I would encourage you to try to focus on a specific area within the profession. For example, if you want to do finance, right? So there must be many different specific areas within finance that you can consider. So when you write an essay like this to talk about the career path, to talk about your career plan, you want to be specific. You want to focus on a specific area. Okay, for example, there's financing for climate change. That will be pretty specific. If you want to do auditing, okay, usually professional auditors nowadays, they focus on specific industries. So industry would also be a specific area for the auditing professions. And I would also encourage you to think big in terms of social responsibility and how your professional skills and how your career can make a difference in a society. I think that would be quite an interesting question to consider. So that would be something to think about as well. So it's not just about making money. It's not just about a personal gain. It's also about your social responsibility. So that's the second essay question. The third essay question is actually an optional essay. Basically, it asks you to provide any other information you think would help us evaluate your potential to succeed in a program. I think if you look at this word here, succeed in a program, I guess the word succeed has several meanings. And one of the meanings is that you want to convince your readers, the admission committee, that you can survive the program. Okay, actually, when I was in Oxford, I was talking with the program leader, and he said one of his nightmares is that students could not complete or graduate from the program. So I think this is something that a lot of people have in mind. You take in an international student, sometimes they come from EFL background, right? English as a second language or foreign language background. You want to make sure that they can actually do well. So I guess that would be something you want to keep in mind. That is why if your GPA or test scores were less than perfect, you may want to offer an explanation, provided that explanation is actually reasonable. So that's why I italicize it, because you have to be careful there. If you don't have a very good GPA or test score, you can't expect this essay will make much difference. But again, some of the points that you can cover here, it's short essay. There's not much you can write about. One thing you don't want to write about is your childhood story or stories about your parents. The reason I strike this out but remind you don't write this is because based on my past experience working with a lot of students, people tend to write about this for whatever reasons, but don't write about this, okay? So basically, the message should enable the readers to evaluate your potential to succeed, whatever that succeed means. I just talk about succeed could at least survive, but it could also mean something else. So you have to try to attach some meaning to that. And maybe only talk about faculty members you'd like to work. Again, even for master, you're not going to do original research, but still you want to do some research. And also, in terms of some of the courses or program features that can help you to achieve your career goals, you could also talk about that. But these are just some of the suggestions I offer here. You can also think more creatively and come up with other points. And this is optional, so you can decide whether you want to write it or not. So let's take another example, and this one is from Master of Public Health at Yale. Please take a quick look at this writing instruction. I highlighted a few words here. Here it says, the statement of objective is one of the most important components. It is your opportunity to make the case for why people always claim that, but in reality, how important it is, we don't know. But again, it says, tell us your public health story. In other words, because this is a program about public health, that's why you want to tell the story. It's your story, but at the same time, it has to be a public health story. So in other words, if you are applying for a Master of Financial Engineering or whatever discipline, you want to tell a story within a discipline. You just talk about some general stories, right? Experiences, and how that experience have taught you, and how they're informing your decisions. Because they want to understand your area of interest and public health question you wish to explore. So I think this somehow highlight the reason why you want to do a master degree is you want to explore a question. Okay, you want to bring a question to the master program. This is still an opportunity for you to study, to explore a question. So maybe, in other words, I want to emphasize the career-oriented nature of the program, but at the same time, let's not forget that master program is also for you to satisfy your curiosity, to pursue some kind of advanced academic study. And the next point here is to know your plans for how you hope to use your degree. Okay, so again, after you graduate, what are you going to do? And finally, anything you can tell us about what you bring to the classroom. So that's another interesting point. So I think the assumption here is that the educational experience does not only come from the faculty members. It's not like the teachers lecture. It's also about the students interact with one another and learn from one another. So in that sense, I think it's still quite important to get into a good university, a good program, because the important thing is that you will be able to meet with some good students. So again, some key points to remind you. When you write that statement of purpose, you only focus on the business. Okay, here it says, tell us your public health story, not your childhood story. You want to use a language that can reveal your professional identities. So choose the words carefully so that the readers, when they read your statement, they can sense that, okay, this guy is actually well trained. They have the specialized vocabulary, specialized lexical resources to make a point, okay? It's like communicating with the experts. Your readers are experts in your field, so do not explain some just terms that experts actually understand, okay? You don't have to explain those terms, okay? You have to assume that your readers know a lot about the field. And again, tell your story within the discipline. That means you want to talk about your research project. If it is a non-academic project, you have to be careful. It could still be relevant, but make sure it is related to the discipline. It's not just about some kind of random extracurricular activities that can highlight your leadership. Internship, again, it has to be related to your discipline. If it's a part-time job or job experience, it has to be related to your discipline. And you want to, again, in your statement, you want to show that you have made an informed decision. The decision to apply for this program has been a rational one. You have taken into account different information about yourself, about your career plan, and about the program itself. I think you can refer back to the diagram I showed you earlier, the you right now and the you 3 years later. And you want to have a very clear idea of what area that you want to pursue and what research question you have in mind. Okay, even though this is not a research degree, you still have to do a research project. And also what to bring to the classroom. You only think about your strengths and your potential contributions. Here, I think you might want to relate to the courses. So you have to do your research, you have to do your homework to look at all the different courses. Maybe some courses there will be group project, and this is where you will contribute. Just to remind you the diagram that I showed you earlier. So here are some of the questions. Regardless which program that you will apply, you can maybe keep these questions in mind and to guide your personal statement writing. So the first question, the first set of questions is, again, what is your career plan? What is your dream job? Why is it your dream job? And what do you expect yourself to be doing 5 or 10 years from now? I can understand and also imagine it is quite difficult for you as a year 3 or year 4 students to answer these questions. But I think you should try. And you don't want to try alone. You want to consult as many people as possible. They try to mobilize all the resources available to you, including the teachers at this university, including your parents, your family members, and your friends, anyone you can trust, anyone who has more experience than you, because this is important, right? And it's important for you to figure out your career plan as soon as possible and also as clearly as possible. Again, I have a bad experience and I made a bad decision. I think part of the reason why I'm doing this is to make sure that you don't make the same mistake that I did. And the second question is, the second set of questions is, what are your strengths and weaknesses as a professional in your field? And how did the training and experience at this university shape your professional identity? So somehow you need to reflect on the courses and the training you received here. And then how did the training prepare you for the challenges in the master program? When we say the challenges in the master program, that means you will have to refer to the research, the homework you have done for the master programs. You have to figure out the courses you're going to take, whatever requirement for graduating from the master program. And there must be some kind of connection between your undergraduate work and your master program work. I think somehow this question is basically a reiteration of the diagram that I showed you earlier. What skills and strengths do you need to further develop before you can land your dream job and launch a successful careers? I think this question is basically referring back to that diagram and how would the master program help you develop such skills and strengths. There's one thing you can think about is imagine you are the admission officer. Okay, so you have 15 slots for this program and you got 100 applicants. Okay, so which students you want to pick? I think one of the most important questions is who among these candidates can benefit most from the program. So I think that's the question people would ask. And here, if you can somehow show that you have a clear plan for your career and you have some good training from your undergraduate program, and now you can benefit from this master program to develop these skills that will help you to succeed professionally, If you can make that story very clear in your personal statement, I think you will have a better chance. So for the personal statement, of course, there are some other factors you cannot control, like GPA or some other things, but at least you want to do a good job here, writing the personal statement. Again, the last question here, I put it italicized because I think it's optional. You may or may not have the opportunity to talk about this in your personal statement, but this is something you want to think about. What do you value most in your life, and how can your professional development help you such value? But again, I don't think it's always appropriate to talk about this in the personal statement. It depends on what value you're talking about and whether or not it's actually relevant to the program that you're applying. But I think it's quite an important question to think about. So I just put it here for you to consider. All right, so what I'm going to talk about now is basically sort of a sample outline, a suggestion on how you can write your personal statement. But one thing I want to remind you at the very beginning is that this is just a suggestion. You can consider this, but you don't have to follow this completely. You should always take into account the writing instruction and also your personal situation to decide how you want to organize your personal statements. And this is why we want to do follow-up tutorials to give you feedback on your outline. It starts with an introductory paragraph. And when you write the introduction, you write the first few sentences of your personal statement, you probably want to get some attention, right? You want to use the attention getter or gambit to make sure that the reader would read. But sometimes people overkill it. Like they like to use famous quotes or try to impress the readers with some kind of philosophical, profound statements. I don't think that's a good idea, because these people, they read your statement, they are the experts, okay? So you want to talk about why you want to apply for the program, right? You want to get straight to the point. So I would encourage you to start with introduce your area of interest or the research question that you want to explore, referring to some of the writing instruction we talked about earlier. And again, you don't want to talk about things like very big, general problem face, or you want to save the world. That's not for the personal statement. And instead, you want to discuss a very specific problem that your profession or you as a professional can help address. So try to consider some specific problem instead of a general or grand problem. Whatever you decide, you want to write about these things that's related to application. And then perhaps you want to end your introductory paragraph with a one-sentence answer to the major questions in the writing instructions. Okay? Depending on the writing instructions, you want to read that question very carefully and identify the major questions that you need to answer, and then answer them. And here you can try to write a complex sentence, but then in that complex sentence you want to address all the main questions. Among these questions, probably you want to talk about your skills and your background and how these skills and background match the program requirement. You talk about your research interests and career plan. Maybe you talk about that you need this training to pursue a specific career. And then the second paragraph, my suggestion is you want to talk a bit about your undergraduate coursework, right? Because that's actually the sort of the main component of your undergraduate education. So spend one paragraph talking about that is not unreasonable. Again, you want to focus on your major discipline, right? To look at the different courses that you have taken, and you want to highlight how the courses could help you to succeed in the master program, because in the master program you have to take and you need to have certain background in order to do well in the courses. So this is where you can connect your undergraduate education with the master program that you are applying. And perhaps you can also think about in terms of if there's any gap in your training. Okay, so you have done your training at HKBU, and I'm sure it's a good education, but there must be some kind of gap here and there. So perhaps this is where the master program can fill the gap. And again, you want to emphasize the skills and you have developed, the knowledge you have acquired through the undergraduate coursework. And hopefully, I think the last thing is challenging, but I always encourage students to look at your undergraduate education as a whole. Look at all these different courses and try to connect the dots and try to think about how it's a framework, how these different courses put together to provide the training that you have received. And again, this can be related to the master program. So that would be the second paragraph. Again, these are the suggestions, okay? Whether you want to cover all the points or in what order, it's really up to you. And the third paragraph, you probably want to review your undergraduate project experiences. So that's going to be outside the coursework. Or maybe, I don't know about the courses that you take. If there's any courses that involve significant amount of research or independent study or project, you can talk about that as well. But the third paragraph is basically about research. If there's other extracurricular activities that is related to your future study, you might also talk about it. And I think when you write the third paragraph, you might want to think about that UCLA essay, which asks the candidates to write about a project, right? So some of the points the essay question asks the candidates to write about, you might want to take that into account and see whether you want to cover those points. So my suggestion is to focus on just one or two projects, okay? So we call the UCLA Financial Engineering essay. And again, similar to my suggestion for the UCLA essay, you want to adopt an MRD model or any other organizing framework that you find appropriate, and highlight the skill development and other learning experiences. So the skills should be quite clear, especially if you go over the method section, right? So that would be the skills that you use. And in terms of other learning experience, that could be more diverse, whether you learn how research works, or there could be some other inspiration that you get from the project, okay? So you have to be a bit more creative here, but also in terms of reflecting on your own experience. And you want to talk about how this kind of experience actually inspire you to further your studies. So sometimes it could be just a little something from your earlier project experiences that actually motivate you to go further and to pursue a master degree. If that's the case, then you can talk about it in your personal statement. And again, when you write these project experiences, you should try to relate whatever you talk about here to the master program that you're applying. You want to say, okay, as I said earlier, this is why I want to do a master degree. I want to further pursue or investigate this problem, or this project experience has actually developed this skill which I can use in my master program. So it's very important to keep the master program in mind and also relate to this master program from time to time when you write your personal statements. And then the fourth paragraph is going to be about your career plan. And I think your career plan should be somewhat related to the previous two paragraphs, right? The kind of training, coursework you have done, and also the project experiences should somehow inform your decisions, what kind of career you want to pursue. So you want to talk about your career, your dream job. You want to talk about how you have developed the interest in such a career. Perhaps some courses that you took at this university, or some of the projects you have done actually motivate you to pursue this interest. And what kind of skills and experiences that you need to implement such a career plan. I think that's the logical next step. After you talk about your career plan, what is your career plan, then you can talk about what do you need in order to launch that career. And once you identify your educational needs based on your career plan, then you will be ready to talk about the reasons why you want to choose the target master program. So here, again, it's just one paragraph, so you have to pick and choose how you organize these different points. But again, these are some suggestions. You want to talk about the specific courses. Okay, again, you have to do your homework. You have to tailor-make your statements for different programs. The specific courses that may strengthen you as a professional, the faculty members that you would like to work with, or your thesis, any other learning opportunities that can help you to accomplish your career goals. For example, if the master program offers internships, then that internship could be a very important stepping stone towards a permanent job offer. And actually, I think the geographical locations of the university is also an important factor. When I was a high school student, I applied for different universities. I didn't look at the cities at all. So I ended up visiting St. Louis. St. Louis is like in the middle of nowhere. I was very naive at the time. But if you go to the States, make sure that you go to a city where there are industries, there are companies and job offers, okay? That's actually quite important. And also why you will be an asset to the program, okay? So again, you want to think about not just how you can learn from the program, but you also will become part of the program. You can also contribute to the program in terms of group projects or whatever other opportunities that you can reach the learning experience of other students as well. And finally, the last paragraph you just conclude and try to reiterate the main points and also summarize your main arguments. Okay, so that will be the end. Once you have a detailed outline for your personal statement, what you can do, well, first of all, you need to write a detailed outline. So based on the sample outline I just provide, and of course you want to take into account the writing instruction, your own situation, and you write a detailed outline. And basically you can fill in the different keywords and terms, right? Once you have a detailed outline, I would encourage you or strongly encourage you to get as much feedback from different people as possible. So this is a picture I took in March, in Seattle. When I get a chance to visit the Facebook office in Seattle, it says feedback is a gift. So feedback is very important because this is how you can further improve your work. So this is my advice, do not write your full text essay. Do not write your full text personal statement before getting feedback on your outline. Okay, as a writing teacher, I always tell my students this: do not write your full text essay before you get feedback on your plan. Because if you don't have a good plan, there's no way for you to write a good essay. So that's the general message I always tell my students. And I think for personal statements, the same deal. Try to get as much feedback on your outline as possible before you write a full essay. So you should get feedback from at least 3 people, including your language teacher. Probably you can get some feedback from me. And you also want to get feedback from the discipline experts, the teacher in your department. Because you will have to ask them for recommendation letters anyway, right? Perhaps you should just show them your outline for the personal statement and then have a meeting with them to get some feedback, and then you can also maybe talk about the reference letter as well. Okay, and also talk about your career plan. I think it's more important for PhD application if you can get a good reference letter, perhaps some recommendation from your teachers to their friends or colleagues in the US or UK. That could be very helpful. I will talk about that tomorrow, PhD workshop. And perhaps you also want to show this personal to a friend of yours from other fields, someone who do not necessarily have the technical background, just to check and make sure that your writing actually makes sense. So again, the key message here is that it's very important to get feedback at an early stage of your writing. Okay, you don't want to get feedback after you draft the whole thing, because once you draft the whole thing, what if I read your essay and tell you, it's not good, and you have to rewrite? It's a waste of time, okay? So make sure that you have a good plan right before you commit yourself to write a full essay. I think we are going to have some follow-up tutorials through Language Center. Most likely it's going to be conducted in virtual mode. Okay, so what will happen is that you will send me a summary of the master program that you are applying for, and to include the writing instructions, and also send me a detailed outline of your personal statement. And also, I would encourage you to ask some specific questions you may have about the outline. Okay, do not ask the general question, what do you think of my outline? There's no way for me to answer that question. Of course, I will give you comments, but if you have any specific questions, then you can include that. If you have got feedbacks from other people, you may want to include that as well. And then I will give you feedback on your outline. You can revise your outline, and then you can write the full text draft and send it to me for comments. I will give you more details about how to sign up because I'm still talking with the Language Center staff about how this will be arranged so I can get my teaching hours. We'll stay in touch. Final reminder, but I think you already get this message. Ask not how you can get into a master program, because you will get into a master program. Ask how the master program can help you succeed. Right? So that will be the key message for today. Finally, acknowledgement for today's workshop, and then I will open the floor for questions and comments. Right, thank you.